Mayday, mayday, mayday! This is T-Playa, this is T-Playa, this is T-Playa! Mayday, this is T-Playa! My position is at the atmosphere of Sobrius. I am crashing. I have 4 people on board. Mayday, mayday, mayday! This is T-Playa, this is T-Playa! I can't believe it. I survived. The spaceship was falling apart. And there weren't enough escape pods. I looked around and saw the 3 other people who boarded the same pod. They were already climbing out of the burning wreck, and I had to quickly do the same. As I climbed out of the pod, I tumbled. I had to calm down. The big guy helped me up. I thanked him, and we noticed one survivor crying next to the pod. We tried to calm him down, but he was overwhelmed what had just happened, so we weren't able to get through to him. I took a quick glance around me and realized that if we wanted to survive in this alien world, we had to get to work. By looking at the other survivors, I noticed that we were all in shock, but most of us seemed to be at working order. Then it came to me. I had to be the one who will save us. We needed at least food and shelter to survive until tomorrow, maybe even something to defend ourselves against the local fauna we knew nothing about. I ordered others to gather resources, to cut wood and sticks for a shelter and scavenge anything from a landing pod, while I went to observe a nearby berry plant. It took way longer than I originally anticipated, almost the entire day, but I discovered that the fragile-looking berry plant was surprisingly tough and it managed to stay upright under the weight of its heavy fruits. The berries themselves didn't look very appetizing when small, but seemed to become nice and juicy when ripe. I'll name them beef berries, because they are somewhat similar to that vegetable that goes well on beef sandwiches, or at least so I've heard. I can safely say that we can eat these berries, and I think planting them should also be straightforward. Proud of what I had just discovered, I rushed to tell the others. Then I noticed that they had been hard at work. They had already started constructing a shelter without me telling them where or how. Someone else could have been overjoyed by this, but I knew that this was way too close to the crash site, which was still burning by the way, and we all had already inhaled a bit too much smoke on the spaceship before boarding the escape pod. We didn't need a severe smoke inhalation on top of everything else. Did they even check the surroundings for an area that could provide natural protection against hostile creatures? I decided not to dwell on it and told them that we needed to haul as much of the useful material under the stick shelter so it wouldn't be exposed to sun and rain. The one survivor who had a meltdown seemed to understand what I told him, so I trusted that he would be able to do as told. He seemed to be experiencing a catharsis after the meltdown and his spirits were through the roof. Wanting to be useful, I decided that I should start planting the berries I found. It took me a couple of hours, but I managed to plant enough to maybe feed us for a few days later on the line. I hope that they will grow. Almost everywhere I looked, there was knee-high grass as far as the eye could see. I hope there's no nasty insects hiding in there and biting us while we sleep. I noticed the sun setting and realized that we hadn't even searched the surrounding area for anything useful. I still had energy in me to check the area beyond one small hill, so I headed there. As I climbed through the vegetation and merged on the other side of the hill, I noticed these tall bright-leafed plants in the distance. I rushed there in hopes of finding another food source, but after a closer inspection, I determined that this plant was most likely not edible. Then I turned around and I startled. Not that far away from me, I saw these huge creatures. I took my knife to my hand and decided to run. As I was racing back the same path I came from, I saw just with the corner of my eye, one of them stood up. My heart stopped beating and I stopped breathing, and all I could think of was why couldn't they go any faster? Darkness made me already uneasy. I could barely see what I was doing or where I was stepping, and now I knew there were creatures taller than me not that far from here. Soon I arrived back to the camp, and I assumed the worst because I saw no one around. Maybe the creatures already ate them, and now they were coming after me.
Just then I heard hammering noises coming from the escape pod. Among the still burning wreckage, I saw a silhouette of one survivor. I put my knife away and started walking there.
When I got closer, I could see him eating something. He said that they had found emergency rations inside the pod, and there were multiple boxes of it. If nothing else, maybe with these we would have a chance to survive a few days on this planet. I decided to haul the rest of the rations under the shelter. My stomach was rumbling on the way back, but chatting with the big guy helped me shift my thoughts out of my belly. He seemed like a nice guy, but I don't know them yet, so I can't say for certain what kind of people they are. I guess I'll learn to know them if they survive that long. He introduced himself to me as Hugo, and in return, I told him my name, Krista Yul. As he went back to scavenge the pod, my hunger grew, so I decided to eat one of the rations I carried here. The other guy was also hard at work, expanding the shelter next to me. While I ate, he told me that he was sorry about what had happened. He told me that he would give his everything to get us rescued. I told him that maybe we should focus on survival first, and he agreed. He addressed me by my name, which he had overheard when I was talking to Hugo. Then he said that his name was Han, and that getting to know each other felt good. It sounded intrusive, but I would be lying if I told that I didn't feel the same. Han continued constructing the shelter while I ate, but then I started to wonder where was the last survivor. There was 4 of us when we landed here, but I hadn't seen her since I started planting the beef berries, and that was half a day ago. As I was finishing my meal and pondering her fate, the bushes next to us jittered, and soon she emerged carrying a pile of lumber on her shoulder like it was nothing. I was a little offended by this. She was clearly physically strong, and now she was just showing off. I decided to get out of her way and just take my time and walk around a bit. When I was heading back, I noticed that she had constructed a table. I was a little annoyed that I didn't think of it first, since I had just eaten on foot. Nevertheless, she hadn't done any chairs for us, so I took it as my next top priority job to make something to sit on. As she walked by, I asked her if she could get us some more wood for a campfire. I think she nodded before heading to work. I chatted a bit with Han while I was working. He told me that her name was Nova Jones, and that she seemed to want to be alone. He hadn't really talked to her yet. They only introduced each other while constructing the shelter earlier. I agreed with him that Nova seemed to be a little more withdrawn compared to the rest of us. Soon, Nova came back transporting another huge log on her shoulders. Han continued to eat his leftover rations, and I started building the campfire. After I was finished, I asked Nova how she was doing, but the conversation ended before it really had time to begin. She only said that she was fine. I then tried to continue talking to her about the berries I found, but she didn't seem to be interested in anything more than her rations she was eating. I told her that I was going to build a research desk for myself, so we would have a better chance of surviving. I had no idea, did she choose not to listen what I had just said, or did she not understand what I had just said, because she just walked off. Han must have noticed that, because he annoyed me by saying that sometimes it's hard to get along with others. He wasn't wrong. After I had finished the research desk, I noticed how drowsy I had become. I started to feel a bit dizzy, so I laid down on one of the sleeping spots someone had put together. As I laid there and looked at the emergency rations next to me, I was thinking that we need more food tomorrow. I knew that the rations would soon be eaten and the berries would still need many days to grow. Maybe the answer would be hunting, but I had no experience with weapons, so I would be no use at getting the meat. Maybe on the morning, I should figure out how to make us some durable weapons, but now let me just close my eyes, just for a while.